And the host.
This proves exactly what I'm talking about. A medical doctor's review of Andrew Tate with Piers Morgan regarding clinical depression.
Two world-renowned individuals, and they carry a lot of weight with the words that they say.
Do you believe depression is a real thing?
I believe that feeling depressed is real. I don't believe depression as a clinical disease is real, no.
Really?
Correct.
I understand the argument why Andrew Tate would be saying that clinical depression doesn't exist. Here I think he's inaccurate, but I understand where he's getting at. Because he's not saying that clinical depression is a pathological thing that is stuck to the human. It is a recognition of a state that a human is experiencing.
I know that feeling depressed is real. I believe that the #1 power you have against these things are trying to take control of your own mind and affecting your own life. I believe that it's not healthy to hand over all your power and believe that depression is an outside disease that you can't affect.
Where I don't agree with you is that there's no such thing as clinical depression. There absolutely is.
Well,
it's a proven scientific medical reality. Is there such a thing as clinical?
You can't listen to this garbage or else you're going to end up fat, fruity, blaming all your vaping. All your problems are going to be related to this. Just if you just believe that it's not real, your life will be better.
Clinical depression, absolutely.
So
you don't accept there is such a thing as clinical depression.
No, I don't.
And that to me is a damaging view.
And what the host was pointing to was that clinical depression is something that he was insinuating the guest is saying is not real. But that's not what he was insinuating. What he was insinuating was that depression is a thing that you experience, not a thing that you have. And there's a lot of validity to that.
Okay, well, let me explain why. If someone comes to me and says, I'm clinically depressed or I feel very, very sad, I would say the first thing you need to do is stop accepting the identity of a clinically depressed person.
And do some goddamn push-ups.
Stop accepting you have no control over this. And what you need to do is stop identifying that way and let's work together to try and fight against it.
There isn't an eminent doctor in the world who would tell you there is no such thing as clinical depression.
I think that's what you believe, Piers.
That's what I believe.
I don't believe in things that take power away.
There is not an eminent doctor in the world
Piers,
that would agree with it.
Piers,
do you think you know more than doctors?
When you say to someone that they have this thing, it sticks onto them like their identity.
Yep. Just like that guy we saw at Omegle. Every single person that believes they're depressed, I noticed that, is always, no offense to the people, but out of shape, kind of fruity, vaping, putting a bunch of garbage into their body. This is the reason that your mental health is fucked up. You're not inherently, there's not something wrong with your brain at birth. You just don't want to improve and you're blaming it on something else. It gives you validation for being a mid person.
You can have a phone, you can have clothing, whatever it may be, but show me where your depression is. It's not there. You can't see it. It's because it is a part of the response that your body has, and it's a constellation of symptoms that makes clinical depression very real. But the way that he's inviting it has more availability for the individual to actually adapt through it and recognize that it's not a thing that they have to live with forever. And it makes them a lot more actionable in the consideration that if I were to do things, take ownership, accountability, take responsibility, and seek support, that I can navigate through the resolution of the depression. And that's what was missed by this host. And he said that there's no eminent doctor that would ever say that. Well, I'm here and I'm agreeing with Andrew Tate.
A doctor?
The thousands of people who have emailed me saying, my doctor told me I was clinically depressed and it's a disease that I have got in my brain and I can't be fixed. And I started listening to you and I realized that that's not the case and I can fix my own life and you're the only person who has ever helped me.
Oh, Andrew.
This is where healthcare providers have to be careful, where we put labels on patients.
My girlfriend, for example, her best friend started going to therapy and then she said, I'm depressed, I'm clinically depressed. She spent 1 day in therapy and immediately was prescribed with clinical depression. This is so that you come back every single week and now you're a patient. That shit is a pyramid scheme more than any course that you could buy online. They call the Creativity Kit a scam, a pyramid scheme. But then you spend 1 day in therapy and immediately they prescribe you with pills and say that there's something wrong with your brain. This person is not depressed. She's somebody who's going, I don't want to say stuff about her personal life, but she's not depressed. But that belief will start to validate your problems. Instead of trying to improve, instead of trying to get out of that mindset, whatever the fuck is making you sad, heartbreak, being fat, just fix it. Improve yourself, and that's the bigger fix. Sitting in therapy and wasting your time is literally wasting your time. Every person, pay attention to every single soy boy, not even soy boy, I don't want to throw insults, pay attention to every single person who's advocating for therapy and pills. They all look the same.
Especially when it comes to mental health conditions that they're having. They're going to carry it around like a laundry list of things that they're having with them when it's in fact things that they're experiencing.
Thousands of people have
Andrew,
emailed me
if
that
you
exact
think-
email.
If you think you are single-handedly curing people of clinical depression, you are living in cloud cuckoo land.
I think that clinical depression, I actually agree with you, is massively overdiagnosed. I've already said that PTSD is a very real thing. I've already said
I didn't. Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Again, you're misquoting me. I did not say clinical depression is massively overdiagnosed. I said that people who claim to be depressed but don't have clinical depression. In other words, there are a lot of people who just have a bad day and declare, I've got depression.
Yeah.
And I say, well, have you been to a doctor? Have you been clinically diagnosed? If you have and you have clinical depression, that's one thing. But if you haven't, we could...
No, Pierce doesn't get it. They overdiagnose. Anybody who steps in the doctor's office says, I'm sad, can be prescribed. There's no brain scan. There's no there's no chemical imbalance with your serotonin. You walk in and they say yes or no. That's it.
We work on some mental strength and resilience skills with you. But a clinically depressed person has an absolutely proven medical condition that is beyond their control.
The host is not being careful with his words again by saying that it is beyond their control. In many instances, it temporarily can feel like that, and the symptoms can be incredibly overwhelming. But there is a reclamation of the capacity of the human to be in control of the symptoms, but it's how they navigate it and the relationship that they have to it. There's one that is empowering, and there's another one that's disempowering. And it's disempowering when the person is labeled with the depression that they carry around everywhere, rather than the perception that the depression that they're experiencing is a state that can adapt.
Not according to me and many others, my friend.
Well, look, what do you know about it, honestly?
I know
You're not
from...
a doctor, are you not trained, are you?
I'm not a doctor.
You're not a psychiatrist, you're none of those things.
Okay.
But the moment you try and deny clinical depression...
I believe feeling depressed is real. I do not believe it's a disease that you catch from the sky and you cannot affect. I believe that no matter what happens, I believe you have control of your own mind and you can fight against it. I believe if you change your circumstances in your life, you may feel different. I disagree that if you feel depressed, I disagree that you cannot affect it and change your life and take control and fix yourself and feel happier.
They go to a doctor and they get diagnosed and they get help.
Then I would argue the point that if
It's the complete opposite of what you just said I said.
I would argue the point that if somebody has depression of any kind, whether it's clinical, whether it exists or not, whether they feel depressed or not, whatever, that taking control of their life, taking personal responsibility and working hard is always going to be the positive, best thing they can possibly do for their life going forward.
How positive is it?
So sitting here saying, I don't believe in clinical depression, you don't believe in depression. No, I don't. I believe that people can take control and fight against things. Right. I believe in personal sovereignty.
Right.
Notice how depression doesn't exist in third world countries, in Africa, the Philippines, and places that aren't easier, like the first world, like places where they push the woke agenda. There is no mental health crisis. People are sad because they're poor, because their family gets taken away, because of real life circumstances. But the belief in people saying, I'm depressed, like that guy on Omegle who's just like, I'm vaping because I'm stressed and depressed at 88. That's only a first world thing. And you can look at somebody, and I could tell you, I don't need to be a doctor, I could tell you why you're depressed. You got a vape in your mouth, you're overweight, you're pasty, you're fruity. This is why you're sad. This shit doesn't exist outside of the first world.
If part of the diagnosis for all mental health conditions, including depression in this case, factored in the level of empowerment that can be placed, especially through the level of suggestibility that comes through the voice of the healthcare provider who provides the diagnosis and is providing the subsequent support. If they are including the idea and concept that the person is not having depression, they are experiencing it, we're going to have a very different way that we navigate depression, and the dialogue and relationship that people have to it and the relationship that they have with themselves is going to completely adapt. And this conversation was very compelling in regards to that, because it brings to light how important the words are and how important things like diagnosis and the identification component is when it comes to mental health. I feel like we can really empower individuals by reconsidering how we label particular conditions that they're experiencing, recognizing the difference and burden that we place inadvertently, though well-intended, when we say you have something.
Wake up.
That's it.
Your job?